It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear, no fear, no fear, no fear here, and declare your independence from me, Ernest Hancock, each and every day on the LRN.FM network from Phoenix, Arizona, the beautiful studios of Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com. Now, let me tell you what we're going to do today. Today we have Helen Benedict. Now, she's a professor of journalism at Columbia University and an author. Now, she's written a lot of documentary type of, true stories and so on, and I think she's working on a novel, The Queen of Sand or something. Let's take a look at this. We'll talk to her about it. It's about women serving, Sand Queen. It's about women serving in Iraq. Now, let me tell you what has interested me in having Helen on. Rarely do we do shows that are of this kind of dark nature. I have had novels about child slavery, exploitation of children, and so on, but it really comes down to a single theme. The theme is this. I'm willing to talk about it because of how the United States and or local governments handle these crimes. Because right now, we are in Iraq, Afghanistan, across the planet. As we're having revolution, people are demanding that they be treated well by their government, and even deeper, oftentimes an understanding of Generation Next is, I want to exercise the ownership of myself. Self-ownership. That's what this whole thing's about. Now, what happens when we have the United States military sends young men and women over to these countries as the enforcement arm of our ideology, is how the saying goes, and the women are constantly harassed, abused, molested, raped? How does the government handle this? How do they represent their rights? Well, poorly. Poorly. Now, Helen Benedict, she's been published in a lot of women's magazines, the New York Times, Washington Post, it goes along with Huffington Post, on and on and on. She has definitely had her say elsewhere, and she gets to have her say here on Declare Your Independence. Helen, do I have you there?
I'm here, hello.
Helen, this is, you understand why this is important. I mean, seriously, it's very important to me, not because of the titillation of it or the sensationalism, but of the principle. Here we have young men and women sent over there, and the most vulnerable, I'm sure, are the women when you got these just amped up, in intense emotion, encouragement of aggression, young men there, and they got, these women available to them, and they know that the military is not going to treat them the same as law enforcement might here. And you have another book on how, what was the title of the book? Virgin or Vamp, How the Press Covers Sex Crimes, Portraits in Print and Recovery, How to Survive Sexual Assault. From that book, and your most recent one about the women in Iraq, The Lonely Soldier, the private war of women serving in Iraq, what's the difference between those two perspectives?
Between the civilian and the military perspective?
Right.
Well, there are several differences. One is, of course, that once you enter the military, you're in a controlled society, unlike when you're, out in the world. Every minute you're watched, everything you do is decreed, when you sleep, when you eat, how you walk, what jobs you do, when you rest, when you go home, and so on. You're completely under the control of your command and the hierarchy of command. And you're told when you enter the military that it's colorblind and gender blind, that everybody is brothers and sisters, and you're all supposed to be comrades in arms. And the other thing that's drummed into a young recruit is that the military is their new family. Their commanders are their fathers or mothers, and their peers are their sisters and brothers. We are your family. So when these people, and the reason for that, of course, is so that you'll stick together and watch each other's backs in battle and risk your lives to save each other's lives. You need to depend on each other in danger to a much more heightened degree than we ever experience in civilian life. So you've got all that. You've learned to trust. You need to rely on each other to save your back. So it is an extra violation and betrayal when one of those so-called brothers in arms turns around and sexually assaults you.
Well, we have, and it's a great intro, thank you, but I'm still looking for the difference. Where you do a novel or a book on how people are treated in the press here, how the local law enforcement treats you, and then you have the military command and I guess their justice system. The difference is what? Are they there to protect the rights of the individual, or are they there to protect the, I guess, the reputation of the military? I mean, what is their motivation? They're just what do they call it, chauvinist?
You mean the difference between the way military command acts and newspaper reporters act? I mean, the first book, Virgin of Vamp, How the Press Covers Sex Crimes, was an analysis of how reporters for newspapers and television cover sex crimes. And there, that was a different subject, except that there are lots of overlaps, which is that the whole way we regard the victim of a sexual assault in our society, in the military and without, tends to be to blame the victim, that she acted seductive or she did something stupid, that she somehow asked for it. And this is a myth and an attitude that goes back many, many, many generations, and it's still perpetuated all the time in the press.
And the overriding kind of theme in the military is different from that. How?
No, it's the same but worse. The culture of victim blame in the military is even more extreme. This
is why I want to go down this road in a short couple of minutes we have in this first segment, is because when Jessica Lynch was in the hospital, we know how they made that, amped that up, and so on. But one of the first things they do, we got pretty blonde white girl. Oh, and she was sexually assaulted by her Iraqi captors, and we're gonna freaking just go nuts because she was sexually assaulted. But when it really happens by people wearing the same uniform, not a word. Right. And it is repressed, and it is covered up, and the private contractors get off, and I'm going, I'm wondering to what end though? Who up top because it comes from the top. I mean, if somebody was to make this an effort, General Day, what's his name, would come up and say, no. Everybody, we're squashing this out. Something would happen. It's not, and I need to understand why. Because the top is interested in preserving the reputation of the military as a noble entity that we're all supposed to admire and support, that we're not ever supposed to criticize. Soldiers are supposed to be above criticism. And they don't want civilian scrutiny, and they don't want trouble in their own ranks. They'd rather cover this crime up than admit it's a problem. I mean, they're being forced to change on this now. But on the ground, when it actually happens and when an individual reports a rape, the reaction more often than not is still to threaten her in ways to shut her up or to kill the case in some other way.
which is what this new class action suit is all about.
And when we come back, that's what we're going to be talking about. Several women are suing the Pentagon. They're going, over here, aren't you guys supposed to be doing your job? What is that job? We're going to find out when we come back with Helen Benedict, the Lonely Soldier. All right, this is interesting. You guys stay right there. We'll be right back.